Hey guys, welcome to episode number 19 of my South Olympic Branch series. Still working on the bridge, working on some fascia, working on some track electrical, and working on dealing with the pollen that's been blowing up my sinuses lately. Enjoy the video. I think I said this before, but it bears repeating for this video. The crossover will be the end of the block for electrical protection as well as signaling. So for each track, there's a bus, and it comes around the end of the peninsula there from the other side. You'll be able to see, well, no, you can't barely make out those auto racks right there. And then, like I said, it'll drop right about here, actually, is where that end of that block is. Underneath, I've stripped the ends of the wires for the inside track here, and I'm just going to stick some Langro connectors on there and push those in there. And that will allow me to connect the feeders at the end of the block, as well as the tortoise up there, and the feeders for the stock rails on or the through route on the turnout as well. Power is only fed right up to the crossover and not through it yet, but then there's no track over there yet, so there you go. I've been working on what I would call the edge buffer, or train protection, or whatever you want to call it. Giving myself some layout between the track and the drop to the floor. Nobody wants to see your trains go on the floor, and you do the best you can with track work, of course, but this is one of those things you just have to either have to do this, or put plexi around the outside of it, or something. Right now I'm experimenting with this. I'm thinking possibly doing some plexi, but I don't really like to have that between me and my trains. So using some scrap lumber, I put some extensions on the joists of the layout, and then took tempered hardboard and attached it to that. The fight, of course, is between having a nice wide radius and protecting the trains, and having enough aisle width so you can get through there. Realistically, I'm only going to have about probably 4 operators in here at any one time, and that will make things busy enough for sure. There's only about, 36 inches between the Elma yard and the peninsula here as it stands, but I don't think that people will have a reason to linger right here. They might have a reason to linger right where the yard is, and that's why when I did the Elma yard part of it, I kind of indented right over there. We'll see how things, eventually turn out. I mean, I could be like, you know, tearing this whole thing down and building something completely different one of these days. But in the meantime, I think I'm fairly decently happy with what I'm doing so far. Like this is an example where this allows me some flexibility here. I might unscrew this and bring it back in a little bit. It's about 4 inches out there right now, and it probably doesn't need to be that far out. But I also think it'll be a nice scenery detail too, as I put a little bit of maybe a ditch or something like that in between the track and the outside. And a scenery part that I could actually probably start on fairly quickly. A little bit more work on fascia. Difficult to get that tight with just me working on it. But that's the way it goes. So we got it coming around the corner. I've adjusted this outside structure a little bit. I figured with the gap I already had, and by moving the plywood here out a couple inches, I would get it to the point where there was enough gap between the train track and the edge of the layout. And it had this added benefit of giving the fascia kind of more of a flow. So it's not perfectly straight. There's a little bit of an angle to it. I kind of like that. And you know, I just got to come along with the fascia board, and that'll be up a little bit more. So if something did fall over, it's less likely to fall off. I think it looks good. Classic hot glue and, you know, cardboard strips, and I'm filling in the gap here. And then I'll go over that with some plaster cloth, as I probably said before, and some Sculptamold to make nice texture for the ditch. I might be going a little overboard with the amount of cardboard strips that are in here, but I wanted to make sure it was going to be strong enough to catch even the heaviest locomotive and cars that might end up in the ditch there. Boy, am I glad to have the ventilation that I have in the room, being able to open up doors on both ends. This has taken me a long time to do this, and that's a lot of hot gluing, which stinks, of course. I went and put in all the plaster cloth I had until I ran out, which looks like it's just about half what I actually need to complete this part of the project. Working on a source for that, and we'll see what happens there. But I do know that a couple of the major craft stores around don't carry it. Then I got out some Sculptamold, mixed a little of that up, and did a little work on that to solidify the plaster cloth. The stream is, or the ditch is turning out deeper than I envisioned, but that's okay. We'll just see how I handle that. More of that Sculptamold and possibly some other stuff. I think it'll fill in nicely. I looked at this edge of the fascia over here and I thought, you know, I don't like how high that is. So I marked it off and I came back with my jigsaw, and I didn't cut a real straight line, but this is scenery, so landscape. It doesn't probably need to be super straight, but I cut off about 3/8 of an inch until I get to about right there. And I don't know how much you guys can tell in the video, but it doesn't look dramatic in the video, but in person it really helps it. And then I may end up filling in quite a bit of this ditch, because in some places it's just pretty big, and I don't know if I want it that deep. So you guys will see as I do. how it turns out. Now I probably should have taped over the ties as I was putting in, before I put in the sculpt mold, but I didn't. And so there's some areas where it's just kind of like needs to be brushed off. And this is a brass brush. And you might think it'd be a little too tough for this job, but actually it's not bad. And so just need to get the white off of there and a little bit. And later on, when I come through and I weather the track, the rest of that'll be taken care of. I had this Rusto Liam Painter's Touch sitting around, and I decided to see how it would take to foam. Some paints and stuff will actually eat foam, so I decided that this would be a cheap way to try it. I did a test paint on a piece that was scrap, and then I went back and painted some of the surrounding pieces for the river, and I think it works okay for that. It's still a bit shiny for my taste, but I'd probably end up going over this with a lighter brown anyway. It did make quick work of it, which is nice, because stuff like this you can spend a lot of time latex painting, or you know, painting it with craft paints. It can take forever. So that is a good catch. The trees that are sitting in here are something that I bought on Amazon. It was like a $10 set of trees, and they look super shiny and pretty fakey. But maybe I can use them for fill-in background trees at some point. I certainly wouldn't recommend them for foreground trees. I might be able to dull coat them and then you know, put some ground foam or something on it, and maybe make them better, but it might not be worth my time to do so. Okay, finished with the hot gluing of the cardboard in this section. Put down the plaster cloth and cleaned up the paint tray. I think I'm going to call that good for episode number 19. And everybody stay safe, play with your trains, and have fun out there.